In today's video, I am going to be sharing how you can fight really well as new parents. It's gonna happen, so how can we fight in a way that's actually productive and brings you closer together? Here we go. Welcome back to New Mom on the Block. I'm Lindsay Legister. I am a new mom and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're a new mom or a soon-to-be new mom, or maybe you have a new mom in your life and you want to get to know this season a little bit more intimately through this channel, no matter who you are, I'm glad you're here. Subscribe to the channel. I have new videos every single week. Trying to be consistent. Thanks for your support. You're the best. This brand is ever evolving and kind of like showing me what it is as I pour more into it. So thank you for being along for the ride. Today, I'm so excited to be talking about why is it important to be able to fight really well. I don't know about you, but there was a time in my life where I would fight unfair. I would be incredibly reactive. I might take really cheap shots at the other person. I wouldn't be able to articulate how I really felt, and therefore the heightened emotional state I was in would cause me to say things that I didn't mean. There are a lot of ways that you can fight really unfairly and actually cause a greater divide between you and your partner. But one of the greatest gifts we can give to our children is showing them that two people can have a conflict or disagreement and also resolve it and love each other even more deeply. So let's give this gift to our children and learn how to fight well. My first tip for being able to fight really well with your partner: commit to the underlying tone of your conversation and interaction during this fight as respectful and compassionate. Respect and compassion should be this underscore of the entire experience. This takes practice, because if you did not grow up seeing and or actually embodying this, it might take a little bit of practice and reprogramming. That's okay. You don't have to do this perfectly, but respect. You want to respect the other person in the way that you speak to them, your body language. You want to respect the communication flow, allow them to speak, listen respectfully, listen truly and intently rather than just waiting to respond and waiting to say what you're dying to say. I want you to remember that the person standing across from you is the other parent of your child, that they are your partner in this life. I really want those aspects of your connection to sink in, and how you want your connection to be felt by your children, even when it gets a little hairy. So the respect piece is just incredibly important. Respect creates an environment of safety to come as you are and not feel like you have to be perfect or get your point across or win an argument. Respect creates this beautiful container of, hey, I love you, I respect you. We're disagreeing, we're having this thing, but no matter what, I hold you in a regard where I would never intentionally hurt you. I like to just kind of like woo-saw or breathe it or meditate on this idea of respect and compassion before I step into these conversations that might be a little challenging with my partner. The compassion piece, we're never going to know entirely what it is like to be our partner. I've had moments in my own marriage where I wanted so desperately, I wanted my husband to feel how I felt, to experience what I experience on a day-to-day basis. There was this like weird need that I had. I'm like, you don't get it. It's really hard. I think what I was forgetting in those moments, that yes, my experience is so valid, and he might never know truly the challenge on a day-to-day basis that being a mother entails, nor will he experience some of the rewards. He experiences them in his own way. But at the same time, I also, in those moments, am not considering his experience. What might be challenging for him? I'm really just one-upping him and saying, my experience is more challenging, and just wanting that to be highlighted and wanting that to be the focus. But I think when we can invite compassion into these conversations, we can assume that the other person is also having, a tough time. Maybe it doesn't look the same, but they're having a tough time. And so if we can just see this conversation as two people coming together who love each other very much, who respect each other, and who want to and seek to understand the other, and also have a deep level of compassion for the different experiences each of you is having, you're going to have a much more fruitful conversation. So again, just inviting in the respect, the compassion before you enter into this conversation. Okay, next tip. Okay, this concept I'm obsessed with. I heard it on a podcast where Esther Perel was being interviewed. It was on the Knowledge Project podcast hosted by Shane Parrish. And she was talking about the choreography of an argument, the choreography of an argument. So I want you to notice the choreography of your typical arguments with your partner. So what does that mean? The choreography of an argument is not necessarily about the content of the argument, but it's your typical moves that you deploy or employ during this disagreement. Okay, what could that look like? That might look like you always leave the room when an argument starts, you slam the door, and he's left just kind of in a huff, like, oh, she always walks away, and you never talk about it again. It just kind of dissolves, but never is resolved. That might also look like one person shutting down, just not being able to talk or not wanting to talk, avoiding eye contact, and the other person really going in, like wanting to pull something from the person, like, please talk to me, like, how could you not say anything right now? This is really important to me. And almost this interesting power dynamic ensues in the argument choreography. Oftentimes, your argument choreography is linked to your attachment style. And again, attachment styles are not concrete in that there might be certain situations that activate your anxious attachment style. There might be certain situations and or relationships that activate your avoidant attachment style, and other ones that activate the secure. But I want you to be mindful of how your attachment style with your partner, especially during fights or arguments, is activated. And so, they might be avoidant, you might be anxiously attached. That might look like, when you fight, you feel scared. You feel like you're going to be abandoned. You feel like you did something wrong. You're over apologetic. And then they're avoidant because they're like, that's not what I need from you right now. Like, okay, I'm leaving. We're not talking. Being mindful of the typical choreography that you have in an argument is really important. We want to walk as close to a secure attachment as possible. We want to shake up our typical default in these moments. And one way you can do that, which is my next tip, is to get curious about the other person. Get curious about yourself. Getting curious, curious child always asks questions. And so can you, instead of making statements, can you ask questions to begin this conversation around the conflict? I'm curious, this morning when you snapped at me for not having done the dishes, I'm curious where that was coming from. I'm curious if it wasn't really about the dishes. I would love to hear more about this feeling. And oftentimes, curiosity in the other person creates a space in which they hopefully will feel more comfortable to reveal the other layers that make up this argument. So oftentimes, the thing you're fighting about isn't really what the argument is about. And we know this. It's not really about the dishes, but is it about you not doing what you say you're going to do? Or is it about one person feeling just completely overwhelmed with the household load, with the mental load, the physical load of their role in the partnership or in the family? It's usually not about the thing you're fighting about, but it's a few layers deeper. So these questions, this getting curious about the other person, really allows for the layers to be revealed, more information to be shared, so that actually the fight, the intensity of the fight really decreases, and you can come down to earth and understand, what are we really talking about here? And then it becomes a conversation, and then hopefully you can feel seen, both of you, and find a resolution, a compromise within there. I say get curious about yourself as well, because oftentimes in arguments, it is best that we take a little space before we come together again. So please ask for that. And in that space and time, I really encourage you to get curious within yourself. So asking yourself questions like, what's really coming up for me here? Why am I so triggered by this? Maybe what in my past has looked similarly to this relationship, this dynamic, this fighting choreography, and how can I remind that part of me that adult Lindsay is here now, and we can do this differently. We can approach this differently. Oftentimes I'll bring these curiosities to therapy, so I highly recommend. But get curious about your partner, get curious within yourself, and then bring it, all of it to the conversation, so that we are diffusing what seems to be, a little hot interaction to something that feels a lot more grounded, a lot more productive, and a lot more loving. Okay, next recommendation is, when you are in the heat of this disagreement, I want you to just notice, open up the aperture of awareness, just notice things, pick up on energy, pick up on the words being used, pick up on the body language, pick up on how you're feeling. Just become like that very multi-sensory being that you are, rather than making meaning of all that you're seeing and experiencing and hearing. Okay? Does that make sense? So oftentimes, as glorious human beings, we make meaning about something that we hear or that we see. For example, when I am in a disagreement with my husband, there are times when I'm speaking where I will look up and to the right. And this is just part of how I think. I think staring directly into someone's eyes sometimes gets me a little overwhelmed, nervous, in a very fight or flight state. And so looking up and to the right, I'm able to breathe a bit more deeply, and I feel like I'm accessing a bit more of my higher self. I know, sounds a little woo-woo, but it's true. I'm able to access that part of me that is not as activated in this moment. My husband might interpret that or make meaning of that and think, well, she's lying because she's looking up and away. She's not looking at me. He hasn't done that, but this is an example. And so instead of, in the heat of the moment, making meaning about every little thing the other person does or says, we can just notice and do our best to not make meaning of it. I think what noticing does, it leaves room to pick up on the energetics of things that you can actually lovingly consider. What does that look like? Your partner might be embodying a type of body language that is very closed off. Maybe they're turned away, maybe they're hunched over, maybe, their arms are like, covering their body. Maybe they're looking down. And taking in that information with compassion and with respect, you can invite them to a more safe, relaxed positioning. And what I mean by that is, like, maybe you just put your hand on their knee or on their shoulder and just look into their eyes with the love that you have for them before you say your next thought. And what this might do to their body language and really to their sense of self and sense of safety is say, like, oh, okay, they're not leaving, they're not going anywhere, they still love me even if we're having this argument. So noticing, taking in information that feels relevant, whether it's things that are said, energetics, body language, that you can consider in this interaction, in this argument, rather than making meaning of everything. And that meaning is most likely inaccurate. Lastly is another Esther Perel goodie. Okay, I was listening to this pod and I was like, okay, so much good stuff. I'll link it in the description. She said that behind every criticism is a wish. Behind every criticism is a wish. You hear me in the back? This one blew my mind. So what we often do as human beings is that instead of saying what we want, we tell the other person what they didn't do. I mean, it's called out, yeah? Do you feel seen? Instead of asking for what we want, we basically criticize the other person for what they didn't do. Why is it so hard for us to ask for what we want? Oh, I'll give you a list of 1,000 reasons. It's something that has been historically really hard for me to do. I think it is a very vulnerable thing to ask for what you desire, to ask for what you want. You know, it's a very vulnerable thing. Why? Because you might be rejected. Why? Because maybe you really don't feel worthy of receiving that thing. And so asking for it just feels out of the realm of possibility. But it is incredibly, incredibly important, especially within your partnership, to be as communicative and clear as possible. You know, I pray that you feel safe enough in this relationship and secure enough in this relationship where you can express this, where you can say what you need without it having to be perfect. I think I had to get over that. I had to get over my imperfect requests. I had to get over the requests or desires I had that maybe didn't make complete sense to the other person or even to me sometimes, but I knew in my heart it was a desire and that it was worth it for me to express it to my partner. But what the reptilian brain likes to do is just be like, you're not doing this. Like, can't you do better? Instead of being really, really direct in our requests. My husband always says, I'm not a mind reader. And I'm like, why? Can't you be? But it's true, we're not, none of us are mind readers. Maybe we as women are a little bit better at it sometimes than other times, but we're not mind readers. And so to really be clear with our wants and our needs and our desires is so critical, especially within an argument context. I think within an argument, there might be an opportunity to say like, you know, my desire in sharing this with you is to really feel understood. You know, I feel like I'm a little triggered right now because I feel misunderstood. And so in sharing this with you, like my desire is for you to understand. And I'm well aware that you might not fully understand, but just know that like that is my desire and that is underlying, you know, why I'm bringing this to you. And your partner might say like, okay, you know, I might never truly understand your experience in this. However, I want to know more. So they might ask you questions. And so your desire, expressing your want and your needs often invites a deeper conversation and often gives the other person permission to actually express their desires, wants, and needs. It becomes, hopefully, a really beautiful deepening of your understanding and connection to one another. So be very mindful that your criticism of the other person does not take the place of clearly and from your heart expressing your wants, desires, and needs. Okay, that is what I have for you today, how to fight well with your partner. Okay, and I will reiterate that it is one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children to be able to have a disagreement, perhaps in front of them. Not every disagreement should be in front of them, but to have a disagreement in front of them that is respectful, compassionate, where we can model really beautiful, clear communication, where we can listen intently, and where we can resolve this in front of them, where they feel and see the resolution. I just think it is so profound. Then they know it is possible. Then they know their parents are committed to this connection, that our parents are not perfect. They do have disagreements, but they still love and respect each other and can find resolution and compromise. So thank you so much for watching. I am wishing you the best in these arguments, and just try these practices. Maybe you try one the next time you find yourself in a little argument with your partner, and just slowly incorporating these practices and approaches. You're doing amazing. Thanks for being here on the New Mom on the Block channel. Next week, we have a new episode. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you really soon.